Ever feel like you're trying to build something, maybe a project or a team, or even just get your day organized and it feels like, well, juggling a million
Oh,
details?
absolutely. That feeling of being overwhelmed by the sheer scale of things.
Exactly. Well, today we're actually going way back. We're digging into the Old Testament, specifically First Chronicles chapter 27.
Right. We're looking at how King David structured his entire kingdom. It's kind of fascinating from an organizational perspective.
It really is. So our mission, if you will, for this deep dive is to pull out some key insights about, leadership and organization from this ancient text.
And see how they resonate today. Maybe even how understanding this structure can, perhaps, strengthen our own faith.
Okay, so diving into First Chronicles 27, at first glance, yeah, it can look like just lists, names, numbers.
Lots of lists. But when you step back, you see this remarkably detailed system David set up.
Totally. And the first big piece is the military, right? How he organized the army.
Yes, and it's not just an army. It's this system of rotating monthly divisions. That's the really clever part.
12 divisions, 24,000 men each month, each with its own commander.
Yeah, names like Jeshubim for the first month, Dodai for the second, Benaiah for the third, who was one of the mighty men, actually.
So it wasn't a permanent standing army in the way we might think of it now.
Exactly. It seems more like a system to ensure they were always ready, prepared, but without pulling everyone away from their fields or trades all year round.
That implies a real focus on sustainability, doesn't it? Balancing defense with the kingdom's overall life and economy.
It certainly suggests that. It makes you think about the logistics, how they manage that rotation smoothly.
Okay, so that's the military readiness part. Then the chapter shifts focus a bit to the tribes.
The leadership over the tribes of Israel. So their layer of organization.
We get names again like Eleazar over the Reubenites, Shephatiah over the Simeonites.
Hobby over the Levites. It shows this dedication to having specific leaders representing and managing each tribal group.
Like distributed leadership, recognizing that different parts of the kingdom needed their own point person.
Right. It wasn't just top-down command. It seems to respect the existing tribal structures while integrating them into the kingdom's overall administration. How do you keep unity with that structure? That's an interesting thought.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, military tribes. And then it gets even more granular. The resources.
Oh, the resources section is incredibly detailed. It's almost like peeking at the royal accounts ledger.
Seriously, you've got Asmaveth overseeing the royal treasures.
Jonathan managing the storehouses in the towns and villages. Esri over the field workers.
People responsible for vineyards, olive trees, sycamore trees, livestock.
It's quite comprehensive. It really highlights a very intentional approach to managing the kingdom's assets. Stewardship, basically.
Yeah, stewardship. Good word. It shows that even the, seemingly mundane aspects of agriculture and storage were seen as crucial.
Absolutely fundamental to the kingdom's stability and prosperity. You can't run a kingdom without managing its resources effectively.
And tucked in there is that interesting note about David not counting those under 20.
Right, linked to God's promise to make Israel numerous, like the stars.
And that whole situation with Joab starting a census but not finishing it because, well, God wasn't pleased.
Yeah, that adds a layer, doesn't it? A reminder that even with the best human organization, there's still this interplay with divine will. Plans can change.
And we also get mentions of key advisors and military leaders rounding things out.
Jonathan, David's uncle, as a counselor. Jehiel, Ahithophel, who was succeeded by Jehoiada and Abiathar. Hushai is the king's friend.
And Joab, of course, as commander of the army. It paints a picture of the central leadership structure supporting all this organization.
So you have the administrative structure, the military structure, and the close circle of advisors in top command.
Okay, so let's pull back from the details. What are the big timeless principles we can maybe take away from this ancient system?
Well, the first thing that leaps out is strategic planning.
Yeah.
David wasn't just putting out fires.
No, he was building systems, proactively thinking about security, about resources, about leadership for the long haul.
That intentionality is huge, putting structures in place before the crisis hits. That's a lesson for, well, pretty much any endeavor, right?
Definitely. And that rotating army idea, it speaks volumes about preparation and readiness.
But sustainable readiness, that's the key. It wasn't about burning everyone out or crippling the economy. It was a balanced approach.
Yeah, it makes you think about managing energy, managing teams, avoiding burnout in our own lives or workplaces today. How do we stay ready without being on 100% of the time?
Such a relevant question. And then there's the focus on people. Choosing leaders for the tribes, for the
It
resources.
wasn't random. It seems like they were chosen for their abilities, maybe their loyalty.
Right. It highlights the importance of, recognizing individual strengths,
Mm,
putting the right people in the right roles. That's crucial for any successful group, isn't it?
absolutely. Discerning talent and matching it to the need.
And another big theme, I think, is how David seems to blend his faith in God with very practical human organization.
Yeah, it's not like he just prayed and did nothing or just organized and ignored God. They seem to go hand in hand.
Exactly. His reliance on God didn't mean he neglected careful planning or administration.
Mm.
If anything, his faith seems to have maybe motivated his sense of responsibility to manage well what God had given him.
That's a powerful combination, faith and diligent action working together.
It really is.
So, thinking about us listening today, how can we take these ancient ideas and actually apply them, make them practical?
We'll start with that idea of structure and planning. Where in your life, work, family, personal projects, could a bit more intentional organization, prevent chaos, make things run smoother?
Like actively designing a system instead of just reacting all the time.
Precisely. And think about that sustainable readiness idea. How can you prepare for the long term in your health, your career, your finances, maybe even managing a team without burning yourself out?
Building resilience, maybe? Not just sprinting all the time.
Mhm. And then the people aspect. Are you consciously identifying the strengths in the people around you, in your family, your community, your workplace? And are you leveraging those strengths effectively?
Putting people in positions where they can actually shine and contribute best.
Yes. And finally, that blend of faith and practical action, seeing them not as opposites, but as partners.
So, trusting God while also doing the necessary planning and work.
Exactly. Actively stewarding the resources and opportunities you have while relying on God's guidance and provision.
Okay, and what about the faith element specifically? How does digging into this administrative chapter of all things actually bolster our faith?
Well, for one thing, the sheer level of detail here can be quite revealing. It suggests a God who is interested in order, in structure, even in the administrative details of life.
It's not just about the big spiritual moments, but also about how things are run day to day.
Right. It implies God's involvement isn't just in the miraculous, but also in the seemingly mundane, the careful management of his creation and his people.
That kind of reframes things, doesn't it? Our own efforts at organization can actually be seen as reflecting something of God's own nature.
I think so. And David's example is powerful here. Trusting God didn't negate his responsibility to plan and act wisely. They reinforced each other.
So we can be encouraged to actively work towards our goals, manage things well, while trusting God.
Absolutely. And seeing the wisdom in these ancient principles, seeing how they still make sense today, it reinforces the idea that biblical teachings aren't just old stories. They have timeless relevance for our modern challenges.
So, wrapping this up, the big takeaway seems to be that these principles from David's time, strategic planning, sustainable preparation, getting the right people in the right spots, and that crucial mix of faith and action, they're not just history.
Not at all. They remain incredibly relevant and potent for us today.
So, here's a final thought for you to consider. How could consciously applying these ideas, this order, this intentionality, how could that not only improve your daily life, your effectiveness?
But also potentially deepen your understanding of a God who seems to value both our diligent efforts and our unwavering faith.
Something to reflect on. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these themes in your own life and faith journey.